Hello, design. So today we're going to talk introduction about new project. Title of it is called Positive and Negative Space Project, and this is going to be a little bit different for some of you. It might even be your first experience. This is going to fit into a category of art known as abstract art or abstract design. All right, and there's a couple concepts that I'm going to try to explain here. But really, where the learning is going to happen is if you watch my demonstration, my sped up demonstration video, and just see how I draw it, okay? And this might seem maybe confusing hearing all these terms that I'm going to share with you, because it's hard to get your head wrapped around it just in hearing a lecture about it. But when you see maybe an artist draw or illustrate it, hopefully it will start to make more sense. Okay, so please watch the demonstration video for sure. And then also know this. My demonstration video is just one example of almost an infinite number of ways of actually doing this type of project. So even though you might feel confused by some of these terms regarding design and kind of what maybe a possible example of one abstract project might look like, I would encourage you to relax and just try to do the requirement that I'm looking for in the different type of line use and the effect of what we'll get into positive and negative space. Relax and create your own abstract positive and negative project. Okay, design project. So let's get into some of these terms. We will probably use these main areas going forward throughout the rest of the year. So these are foundational concepts to understand in design, but not just design. They cross over into a lot of different areas in art, okay, in visual art, even in photography. And so I just would encourage you, as I try to explain these concepts, try to start becoming aware of where you might see examples of these things happening kind of in the real world or in certain contexts as you just kind of go through life. Because as you start to see these things, you're more likely to have your art turn into basically a higher quality types of projects as you observe these things in your environments around you as you kind of go through life. So with that said, jumping into it, this is fitting into a category of abstract art, meaning this is not necessarily based in realism. Okay, abstract art actually follows its own rules, which kind of by the nature of it almost has no rules. Okay, so for some of you, this is going to be difficult because you really want a picture to make sense always. You want it to look realistic. That's kind of a default that we have in Western culture art. And this is much more of a modern or a contemporary concept referring to abstract art. Okay, and abstract art is basically, it doesn't require itself, the artist doing abstract art does not actually have to follow any rules of realism. They can do anything. Okay, so the picture itself literally doesn't have to make logical sense. It's abstract by its nature. Okay, so this is a pretty big starting point. And some of you, this will just come very naturally. You'll like it. You'll like the freedom that it offers, which is really appealing to many artists, which is why they do it. And then for some of you who maybe are a little bit more, you enjoy realism more, and maybe you don't even recognize it about yourself, this might be a harder concept for you. And I just encourage you, power through it, have fun with this, and kind of learn in this whole process of doing this project. So this whole project is going to be an abstract project, meaning it doesn't really have to follow rules of realism. It is going to basically not have to make sense, but I am going to be looking for some observable foundational kind of design concepts in it. Okay, so half of your project is going to be what we call positive space. Okay, and positive space is the art or the drawing itself. Okay, and so what I mean by that is if you have a blank piece of paper, someone draws something, they start a design project, regardless if it's abstract or not, realism, they start creating a project. And as soon as they start drawing, the actual drawing that they do instantly becomes, that's what we would label as positive space. Okay? Any of the art that the artist puts on the paper becomes what we define as positive space. And now the opposite term also applies. Any blank areas of the paper that are left untouched, there's no art on it, no value, it's just the blank canvas, the blank paper. We call those areas in design, or just all of visual art, we call those areas negative space. Okay, so you have this dichotomy of almost every picture out there has identifiable positive space and identifiable negative space, and they play off of each other. And the artists, some very good artists, especially design artists, use this and manipulate this concept very well, and they create very interesting works of art, especially in design, playing off of this dynamic of positive and negative space. Okay, so those are really important two concepts that we'll probably use for the rest of the year. Okay. The other thing that I want to talk about is it gets into a category known as line theory. Okay, so line theory, I'm not going to try to overwhelm you with lots of terms here, but line theory we're talking about, I'm going to want you to do two different categories of lines in your project. Okay, so one of them, very simple, it's going to be considered a curved line, and a curved line is basically exactly what it sounds. It's a curve. So anything that would be like a wave, a swirl, a circle, like an oval, an ovoid, anything along those lines, I would count as a curved line. Okay. Now, where it gets interesting is an artist there in this concept of line theory. If an artist creates a picture using a lot of curved lines, there's actually maybe feelings or even emotions that line use can actually invoke in the viewer of the piece of art. Okay, a lot of times the average person just kind of blows by these things and they don't really think about this, but this is actually how art can affect people when they're viewing it. They're like, I like this picture. Well, why do we like this picture? Well, okay, try to articulate that. I like the color. I like the shapes of it. Oh, you like the shapes. Do you like the line use that the artist used? Okay. And if you start to study and analyze certain pictures that artists have made over time, you start to realize that artists are using different lines to invoke different feelings, okay, in the viewers of their art. Okay, and this is actually many times intentional of the artist's choice of their line use. Okay, so half of your project, I'm wanting half of your project to be curved line use, and then I'm wanting half of your project to be the other. I'm wanting it to be a sharp or a straight line use. Okay, and so you have maybe half of your lines on your paper are going to be curved in some way. You have freedom to choose how and what they look like as long as they're curved. And then the other half of lines, I want them to be straight or have hard angles. And then the opposite applies. The straight lines do not have any curves in them. Okay, so you might have like a zigzag line, kind of like a lightning bolt, things like that. sharp, hard edges, maybe like 90-degree turns, things like that. And this line theory is exactly the same. It's the same concept in the sense that artists intentionally use other lines, other choices of lines, to invoke different feelings in the viewers. Okay? So, recapping real fast, it's going to be an abstract project. I'm going to want you to draw half of your paper with curved lines, half of your paper with straight lines. Okay? This picture does not have to make sense. It'll be very obvious when you watch my demonstration video. Okay? But then I'm also wanting you to take notice that any areas you draw would be considered positive space, and any areas that you don't draw on are considered negative space. And there's a dichotomy of positive, negative space. There's a dichotomy of these curved lines and sharp lines being used, and you create a really interesting, very creative, abstract, positive, negative design project. So let's have fun.